Welcome back to the Lumiose Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, to the Paradox Podcast specifically, where we do deep dives, discussions, and long-form content. And today we're going to be talking about how we can continue what we have from Scarlet and Violet. And what I mean by that is that in the past, Pokemon has a tradition of kind of keeping a lot of the themes or things relevant from the generation that, like, the first game kind of introduces stuff, and they like to keep that stuff alive for the generation. Like, for example, you have, in the very first generation to get a remake, Fire Red and Leaf Green, this was coming after Hoenn. They carry over the abilities thing, giving these abilities to, all the Pokemon in Fire Red, and you do even have, like, a battle tower that appears there. You kind of still get the same events as Emerald, at least, with the different islands you can go to, like Naval Rock. And then you also do have Heart Gold and Soul Silver do the same thing with Sinnoh. Like, it goes and does the Battle Frontier that Platinum had, the exact same one. It gives Gym Leader rematches, which was also something that Platinum had. And then you even see some Sinnoh characters pop up there. Like, the ones that I distinctly remember are, of course, Cynthia at the Ruins of Alph, and also Crasher Wake and Maylene. And on the subject of the Ruins of Alph, I actually meant the Sinjoh Ruins, which you get there by interacting with Arceus at the Ruins of Alph. But that whole event ties Johto to Sinnoh, right? And they, like, directly confirm that there is at least a land in between Sinnoh and Johto called Sinjoh. And we see this continue with Oris. We have the Mega Evolution phenomenon occurring in the Hoenn region and becoming a big part of the Hoenn stories now. And you did have this become a little bit different with Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl and Pokemon Legends Arceus, but it was clear that Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl was a special case. They were going in a completely different direction by having a third-party game, right? Like, it was a game manufactured by a third party. And with Legends Arceus, there were some themes that you could argue were still there. They continued the idea of regional forms being able to evolve into a completely new Pokemon, like with Overquill or Sneasler, or even you could consider White Stripe Basculin evolving into Basilegion as that as well. But, it definitely was a different case, so there is that. But I don't know if they'll do it again with Scarlet and Violet, but I think that they have set up the chance to do it again with Scarlet and Violet, and I wanted to talk about that. So first we need to kind of get the ideas of what all is going on in Scarlet and Violet, and then we can discuss how they'll continue that in the future, or how they could, rather. And by the future, again, I just mean in this generation. I don't think these themes will continue in Gen 10. I just think that they'll continue, throughout the rest of Gen 9. So first, the most obvious one, I feel like, is Paradox Pokemon. Paradox Pokemon are these new, like, species of Pokemon, similar, or, like, category of Pokemon, similar to, like, Ultra Beasts that have been introduced, and they typically are defined by being past or future variants of Pokemon, like a robot-looking Hariyama called Iron Hands, or a dinosaur-looking Suicune called Walking Wake. So obviously the most easy way to continue this is to add more Paradox Pokemon, but I think also you have to have an explanation, right? Like, I can't, if the next games are Unova, I can't walk into the next route and a wild Walking Wake appear and that just be normal. You know what I mean? Like, there's gotta be some kind of explanation for why Paradox Pokemon are appearing in, hypothetically, Unova. I think the best way to do this is honestly through the Dream World. And now, before you groan, I'm not saying that Paradox Pokemon are from dreams. I'm just saying that it does seem that the Intralink has a special connection to time-space, right? Like, the Intralink is capable of connecting you to the Dream World, which is like another dimension. So why can't it connect you to other timelines as well? They could even tie this into Terapagos. Perhaps a Terapagos exists in the Intralink or something, and that's why there are all those weird shenanigans that occurs over in that part of the Unova region, because that area not only does it connect you to the dream world, but also allows you to go to other players' games, right? Which was kind of unheard of for Pokemon at that time, other than like the Union Room. So I think you would have to, connect that you can't, again, just have Paradox Pokemon appearing in Unova with no explanation and no relevance to the plot. But I think that is the way you do it. There is also, I don't want to say a theory, because I feel like a theory has evidence to it, but rather a myth, a wives' tale, if you will, or maybe even you could call it a superstition, a local legend, I don't know, that when you dream, it is of alternate timelines, right? Like that's a thing that some people believe. It's not based in anything scientific. It's more like, religious beliefs, where like it's really just coming from faith, right? But some people believe that dreams are alternate realities. This is even kind of explored. I swear, this whole generation is so relevant to the MCU. But in the MCU, in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, this is something that the main character does, is he learns that, you can kind of dream your way into another reality. And that's essentially what he has to do. And I think, they could do something with that, right? Like, oh, dreams are other realities too. So perhaps Paradox Pokemon come from dreams, but this wouldn't be dreams like imagination dreams, like Martin Luther King Jr., I have a dream, this would be dreams like fast asleep dreams, and that being connected to quantum jumping, which that's a whole can of worms that I don't even want to open, mainly because I don't know what I'll do with those worms when they're opened. But yeah, I think it's worth pointing out that I think there could be something with that. And then you have the fact that there is also the Terrestrial phenomenon occurring in Scarlet and Violet. The Terrestrial phenomenon's the latest gimmick, and, if we see something like we did with Oris, then it would be like this, where we see that gimmick continue. Like Oris had Mega Evolution continue, we would see Terrestrial continue. And I think they can easily explain that with Unova as well, because you have Briar rather, has made Terrestrial possible in the Blueberry Academy. And the thing about that is the Blueberry Academy is in Unova. So who's to say that with a little bit of research, Professor Juniper finds that it is possible to make Terrestrial exist in Unova? Or even, like, I've proposed before a theory that, in short, I highly recommend you check out the full theory, but the short version of it is that anywhere where Terrestrial exists, Terapagos has, like, hive-minded to. Like, he can see that place, and he at least in essence, lives in that place now. All the crystals are an extension of him. So if Terrestrial exists in Blueberry Academy, and Juniper goes over there because she's like, Briar, I don't know how you pulled this off, but I'd love to collect some of the water here and do some studies on it. So she does, and it's sitting in her town, Novema Town. All of a sudden, the wild Pidoves outside start to terrestrialize. So it's very easy to kind of explain how Unova could get this terrestrial phenomenon, because wherever that liquid is, that stuff that's in that ornament above you and the terrarium, well, Pokemon can terrestrialize. So this would also be able to allow stellar types to just be a thing in the game and not be something you get in the DLC in the post-game, right? Because if she takes the resources from the terrarium to Unova, to mainland Unova rather, after the events of the Indigo Disc, well then those resources are allowing for the Stellar Terra type to exist. So by moving those resources into mainland Unova, Stellar type now exists in mainland Unova. Something I would love to see is honestly the terrestrial states, I guess is what we're calling them. Those are the things like when Ogerpon and Terapagos terrestrialize. Those are the only Pokemon that do it so far, but they actually change forms, right? No other Pokemon does that. They just get a type change, they get a little crystal effect, and a nice little hat to go with it. But there are some people who, are relatively credible that claim that there was supposed to be more terrestrial states in Scarlet and Violet's DLC, and they got scrapped. So maybe they got scrapped so they can appear in the next game, which would still focus on terrestrial. I don't know. I just feel like it's too coincidental that GameFreak would be setting up all these things for Unova to have these things, and then they do a Unova game that's not connected to it at all. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be too surprised if, obviously, this is where we kind of get into some speculation about whatever the 2024 game is, but I would not be surprised if we do see a scenario where, like, we get a, basic, just like Unova game, remake of Black and White, true remake in November, and then in January we get a full-on, like, actual new Unova game that continues the themes of Scarlet and Violet. The reason I say I could see this is just because, they did do that with Legends Arceus, so it can't be ruled out, right? But I don't know, I think it's interesting that, like, if you look at, I think, two great generations to compare this to would be Generation 8 and Generation 6. And Generation 8, we had Sword and Shield. It had the Dynamax phenomenon, and it was pretty closed, right? Like, that story ended, and you didn't feel like, but what about this? But what about that? But how does this do this? You weren't really asking a lot of questions, so there was no need to continue it in Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl or Legends Arceus. But then, on the flip side, in Gen 6, you play X and Y, and you're finished, and you're like, okay, love that, because we love Kalos here, but also, like, what exactly is Mega Evolution? How is this only occurring in what's going on? I want to know more about this. And so Oris kind of closes that story. Like, in a lot of ways, Oris feels like a sequel to X and Y, or like I don't know what this would be called, but like when something isn't a direct sequel, but helps to explain the themes going on in that movie, right? Like, I think about how a lot of movies will now do, or franchises rather, will do movies or shows to kind of cover events and explain things from their movie or from their main thing better without actually having to go there. Like, I think, for example, Star Wars, Star Wars has the first three movies were, just A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. They have, not only did they continue that story and add on to it from the beginning, like by doing the prequels and by doing the sequel trilogy, but also they have given shows to kind of fill in the gaps and explain some things. Like, they kind of explain the Death Star a little bit more by giving us Rogue One, and then Rogue One spin-offs. That would be what this is called. I feel like Oris was like a spin-off of X and Y. And then I feel like maybe we could see that now, because Scarlet and Violet was like X and Y, where it finishes and I'm like, okay, you explained nothing. And yeah, I know that there'll be people who say, oh, but they explained, that's Turtles all the way down, and that's fantastic. That isn't what I cared about, to be completely honest. I mean that they did not really explain exactly how Terapagos' powers worked. Sure, they explained timelines. They explained, a little bit of that, but not how Terapagos works. Like, if you read between the lines, you can see it's more than just time, it's reality, and there's just so much untouched, I guess, oil there, and I feel like they've got to be setting up to do more with it, right? I don't know, is that just me? Am I crazy? I'd love to know in the comments below if you guys think that there is a chance that these things, terrestrial paradoxes, will continue in the future. I also do think that, you have similar things go on in Unova when you think about them, right? Like, you do have Genesect, kind of in a way that's like a paradox of some Pokemon. We don't know what that Pokemon is, but it kind of is. So that's pretty interesting. And then you do have some stuff with Kyurem, Zekrom, Reshiram, the original dragon. I don't necessarily think any of them are paradoxes to one another, but it is interesting how you're looking at a Pokemon that was once one Pokemon and is now multiple Pokemon. I don't know, I feel like that could get explained anymore. Then there's also just the connection that, both Kyurem and Terapagos come from a meteor, and it's a question of, like, I don't know. There's just something there. I really don't think I'm crazy on this. Maybe y'all think I'm crazy. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit too much on here. But I do really feel like there's got to be more to Scarlet and Violet's story. And I think that they can continue them in Unova. Again, I think they can do this by Terrastal. You easily just explain it came from Blueberry Academy. And, you think about a virus. How, like, I remember when, like, the Ebola virus was kind of like at its worst, I guess. There was like a case or maybe it was Zika, I don't remember, but there was like a case in Florida. And then all of a sudden there's like 20 cases in Florida and a case in Georgia. And then there's 3 cases in Tennessee. And then there's 4 cases, like it just, the way a virus like starts in one place, but then just spreads, or like how COVID, the first case I believe was in China. And then all of a sudden the rest of the world has it, I think that Terrastal, they could make it work like that, Oh, well, they brought it in to the Blueberry Academy in Unova. We thought it'd be self-contained there. We have terrestrialized Pokemon in Unova now. That's just a thing. Like, Terrastal is now a thing in Unova. I think that would be really neat. I also think that, another thing, too, now that I think about it, is it's a Unova school, and they're giving Terra Orbs to their trainers, right? Like 2 Lacey, 2 Drayton. So hypothetically, because if you look at the anime, we know that Terrastal can work outside of regions because Freed terrestrializes his Charizard in Galar. So, Lacey, Drayton, they can go back to mainland Unova and terrestrialize Pokemon. So I feel like that's an easy way to explain Terrastal. And Paradox Pokemon and the time travel-esque stuff, I feel like can easily be explained with the Intralink and with the Dream World, and with Fennel kind of being a or is it Fennel? I don't remember, but the professor who like studies the Dream World stuff, her research into the Dream World, she can get a larger role and kind of be the key to figuring all this out, and it all culminates with actually giving the Intralink something, right? Because I remember as a kid, I'm 10 years old when Black and White comes out, and I don't really understand the whole Dream World thing. Like, I don't really know how to connect my game to it and all this, and so I always just thought the Intralink feels so mysterious, but they don't really explain it. And I feel like now is a chance for them to really explain the Dream World, and really explain the Intralink and go into why it connects to the Dream World and why it connects to other people's games. What's going on there? Is there a Pokemon behind it? Is there some kind of energy, like infinity energy, that is occurring there, which, seems to also exist in Area 0? I'm really curious about that. I'd love to know all of your thoughts, so be sure to let me know in the comments below if you think that the ideas, the themes, the stuff introduced in Scarlet and Violet could continue into 2024 games in the same way that the stuff from X and Y did continue into Oris. I'd love to know your thoughts on that. If you have perhaps alternate ideas for how they could continue those themes, those story points, those elements, let me know that in the comments below as well. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications so you do not miss all of our future Pokemon videos. Pretty soon we're going to get that announcement of whatever's coming out this year. And we're going to be covering it and having many more long-form discussions on it. You don't want to miss that. So like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And until next time, I will see all of you later.